All right, everyone, we're moving closer and closer to a Silicon Valley tilted plutocracy in the United States. And really, we've got a social credit score system the same as China. It's just not administered by a government. It's administered by corporations in partnership with government. It's just as bad, arguably possibly worse, because it's a legal workaround in some ways as well. And so when I saw that Google had delisted the Federalist from using their ad networks, and that NBC had played an intrinsic role in getting that to happen, I chuckled because most people aren't seeing it for what it really is. What this really is one company screwing one of its competitors by pressuring a third party with a de facto monopoly, in part guaranteed by Section 230 under the government. Essentially, you have a vast vertical monopoly, which involves a few dozen very, very large Silicon Valley firms. These groups are intrinsically, by structure and by government ties in many cases, able to destroy smaller competitors with near impunity, or at the very least make it virtually impossible for them to grow. You have a monopolistic system, and it seems like it's being primarily promoted by self-proclaimed liberals. The interesting part is that people who are on the left are the ones rambling about how supposedly these are private companies, despite the fact that through grants and contracts and platforming of government services, they're effectively no longer private entities at all. They're essentially part of our government. They make decisions like this. What other firm are you going to use to serve ads on your site in a lucrative enough way to make a difference? It's going to be Google. That's your only choice. If you want a smartphone, there are basically 3 companies you can use, and one of them comes from communist China, which isn't really an alternative to the Silicon Valley giants and their censorship when you really think about it. You've got if you want to use a social media site to truly promote your brand, there are only a few choices, and they're all run by a bunch of extremely left-wing, extremely authoritarian billionaires. The left supports this. They are now in support of plutocracy. They're now in support of heavy-handed government co-opted censorship. Who's to say? And this probably happens in boardrooms all the time. Some senator doesn't like some group that's critical of them, so they lean on that side and say, hey, if you don't want problems, ban them off your network. Do you think this doesn't happen? I guarantee that it does. Why do the money changes hands constantly, and they trade favors constantly? One hand washes the other. We need to stop thinking of Silicon Valley because of its structure at this point is particularly distinct from government at all. In my opinion, we need to extend the rudiments of the First and Fourth Amendment to the online realm. Then I find out, by the way, that the Federalist overnight also got banned off PayPal. Now, I stopped using PayPal years ago. They should look for alternative services. The problem is that most alternatives that are actually useful for large sums for large businesses are run by large companies, and you can guarantee that PayPal didn't do this in a vacuum. They were pressured probably by NBC. They probably pressured PayPal behind the scenes as well to get them banned off the networks to make it harder to fight back. It's harder to fight a legal battle when your source of income has been jeopardized. This is done all the time. These Silicon Valley groups and legacy media firms and establishment political figures are all working together in order to appropriate more power and resources in their own hands and to prevent smaller competitors from jeopardizing what have effectively become monopolies. Google is effectively a monopoly. The legacy media, the alphabet soup legacy media, is effectively a form of monopoly. They're terrified of the online world. What really pisses them off is that the internet, the way it's structured, allows people who aren't in big cities to have a voice. Because think, if I've got a cable network, a big-time newspaper saying, I'm in New York, I'm in London, I'm in LA, or something like that. I'm not out in small-town America or out the fringe of the suburbs. It allows people that are more representative of real views to actually spread their views and promulgate them, and to take care of the fact that before, basically, you were getting your opinions from a handful of elite urbanites. That's basically where they were coming from. And so there's a heavy skew to the opinions that were there. That has changed, and groups like NBC are terrified